Well, hello, hello. Hope everyone's doing well, having a good start to their weekend. My name is Cthulhu, and welcome to Book Club. It's good to see you. Last week we discussed what I think is one of the scariest articles on the website. It's very old, very dated, but it still holds up, and obviously is very well known. SCP-087, The Stairwell, remains one of the most highly voted articles on the website, and one of the most just well-known to people who aren't even familiar with SCP more broadly. This week, I thought, since last week's article was so psychologically taxing and unpleasant, this week we would go a little bit of a different direction. We are talking about SCP-1171, Humans Go Home, by DrEverettMann, is the name of the author. And this article is, it's a little different than last week's, to say the least. It takes a decidedly different direction with the SCP format. So, let's take a look. SCP-1171 has no image, has no super... It's not a very complicated article. It's very short. It's a Series 2 article, aka has, the 1-1. It starts with a 1. So it's Series 2. So it's a very early article in the wiki. It's pretty short. So what is it about it that works? Well, let's just start at the beginning. At first, it's pretty ominous. It's currently occupied by a doctor. A tall wall has been erected around the backyard, and all anomalous windows have been fitted with shutters. 2-story house, various writings on windows of the house. There's always condensation. An entity communicates by writing in the condensation. Apparently an inhabitant of another world, actively hostile to humanity. Most recent order complained about ghosts. So it's, initially, it's a monster that writes in the mist on windows of a specific house. A pretty unsettling, ominous premise, I'd say. It's, it's pretty standard ghost story fare. I think it's got potential to be pretty unsettling. And then you get to the log right below. Carbon-based monkeys go home. I'm in my living room. This is neat. How are you doing this? It's good to have someone intelligent to talk to. An oval with 5 dots and a curved line appears. 2 dots were below the line, 1 above it, and 2 on the left. So, I guess this is how... this is the image I used for my thumbnail. This is by an artist named Sunny Clockwork, who does some of the best SCP art in the business. Just absolutely stunning work. Go support them on DeviantArt if you can. But anyway, so immediately it's like, okay, this thing's not human, but it's not a ghost either. It's an inhabitant of some other world. There's no one else there. Oh, mostly just a bunch of gametes and carbon lovers. Can't stand any of that politically correct crap. Hey, humans, don't you have them there? Oh, they're the worst. Don't get me wrong, I'm not racist or anything. Some of my best friends are human. But if they're as good as us, why do they need skin? Am I right? I suppose so. Say, what do you look like? Oh, pretty average. 7 tendrils tall, brown carapace, green bioluminescence, blue eyes. You? Same. So right away, we've taken what was, and still is, an interesting premise of a monster writing in mist on the windows. And it turns out, no, this thing is not super dangerous. It's not a world-ending threat. It's just an alien that's kind of casually racist. Which immediately takes your expectations and just flips them upside down. Which, of course, is only continued in the logs. I lost promotion to a goddamn primate. All this stuff. They can't help being what they are. But would you want your spawn sib to marry one? Oh, I didn't know Doc knew any humans. Variety's the spice of life. That's my motto. How are you? Is your skin nice and flexible, insides full of fluids? You take care, John Doe. Well, I had some words with him. He was a bit lippy, but I put that gamete in his place. Nothing I can't handle. You gotta know how to talk to him is all. Let him know who's boss. That's the ticket. So it just... It takes initially... it is kind of still unsettling of, what is this thing? How is it communicating? But the article is much less interested in how it works and what this thing's motives are, and much more interested in This is weird, and we're going to dive even deeper into the weird parts of it. The idea at its core, that mist monster riding in the windows, is interesting enough that it gets our attention. It makes us want to know more, and it makes us on edge. And now there's two ways you can go with that. If you're going much more on the horror route, you take our expectations and you, bam, you jump scare us. Or scare us in general. You build up the tension, you make it even scarier, keep us on edge. The other way, the way this article elects to go, is you take our expectations and completely subvert them in a funny way. Because the line between horror and comedy is razor thin. There's a reason people laugh sometimes when they get startled, and it's because they're uncomfortable. Horror is just being uncomfortable to a negative degree, and comedy is being uncomfortable to a positive degree. And sometimes there are some gray areas in between, and this article very much exploits them. It starts out setting up an unsettling concept, and then immediately goes, oh no, there's nothing scary, this thing's just racist. This thing's just a MAGA guy, basically, from another dimension. And I think that's really funny. I think that's really smart and effective. Especially because the first parts of this article are written so clinically, like every other SCP document. You know, it is a 2-story house in Queensland, Australia. It was built in 1958 and has been owned by several families, most of whom reported no unusual activity. The anomalous properties manifest on the various windows, versus, oh, they're the worst. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not racist or anything. Some of my best friends are human, but if they're as good as us, why do they need skin? You know, it's the contrast, it's the rub between the very clinical tone of most articles and the ridiculous guy ranting in a pickup truck nature of Boa Ramont's rants. And I think that's really funny. I think the fact that they are having to write so technically and so professionally about this guy who is just kind of a racist asshole is really good and really a smart idea executed well. And it doesn't overstay its welcome either. I mean, this article only has 4 logs. It could have gone more in depth about what's the dimension this guy's like from? What more does he look like? You know, what's his deal? It doesn't matter. That's not the point of the article. The point of the article is not, let's explore every single detail and unravel this big mystery. The point of the article is, haha, alien racist. And it does that. It's not trying to do anything more than that, which I think is smart. It's not trying to overcomplicate it like some articles can do. It really is quite simple. It's a very simple article, and because of that, it works. It's short, it's sweet, just as long as it needs to be. It leaves you wanting a little bit more, like any good article should, or like any piece of fiction should, really. And, I mean, this article is how old? This article is posted in 2012. It was written, 11 years ago, and yet it holds up remarkably well. Where stuff like 087 has some slightly problematic dialogue and the way it talks about some of the D-class, this article has none of that. Because it's so simple, it doesn't need all these big things, and it doesn't leave room for things to not age well. This story of, like, this casually racist guy is something that is, unfortunately, kind of timeless at this point. The whole, some of my best friends are blank, is something that has been a thing for decades and is not going away anytime soon. And so I think the fact that they take this simple idea, don't overcomplicate it, make it something relatable, and especially what's so effective about it from a comedic point of view is it takes an idea that we're used to. Again, horror and comedy, very close. 087 takes something we're very familiar with, a stairwell, even a dark, dank stairwell, and turns it scary. This takes something we're all familiar with, a casually racist, kind of MAGA-y guy, and makes it funny. Both do similar things. They both take a simple everyday thing and make it weird, anomalous, esoteric, surreal, but to completely different ends. And I think that's so interesting. I think it's so interesting that this format can be used in so many different ways. And that's not to say that every SCP article has to be a regular thing we're all used to taken to its extreme, but I think at its core, horror is about taking the familiar and making it unsettling. That's what most horror ends up being. The horror that affects me the most is the horror that takes those everyday fears and preys upon them. And this one starts that way, and then turns it completely the other direction, which is great. I think that's awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have much else to say. It's kind of a simple article, but it's very funny. And to be clear, DrEverettMann is one of the earliest authors on the website. I mean, DrEverettMann has the 003 slot, for context, the biological motherboard. So they've been writing on this wiki for a while, and I don't think they've written in a couple of years now, which is fine, you know, people have lives. But the fact that EverettMann was writing stuff on this wiki so early, and yet it still transcends that early wiki and remains popular, I mean, you can see it's got over 1.5 thousand upvotes, speaks a lot to the strength of the writing and the strength of especially the idea that it is so simple, so easy to understand, that EverettMann can just run with it and just make it, just prey on the comedy of it. I mean, especially the way the Doctor responds to Beauremont. You know, the pretty average, 7 tendrils tall, you? Same. I mean, just the dry responses. I work hard, you know? I know. Like, I love the idea of this Doctor having to comfort this racist anomaly. I think that's very funny. Yeah, I don't have much else to say other than we've clearly seen now how the SCP format can be used for both straight up location-based bottle episode kind of horror and for comedy, for simple, almost Douglas Adams-esque comedy. Next week, we're going to get a little weird. We are going to be discussing, pull it up actually, SCP-055. I forget the actual technical name of it, but 055, which is, as you can see, part of the Anti-Memetics Division. Don't worry about it if you don't know what that means, that's fine. 055 is a Keter class anomaly, which means very hard to contain, or containment is intensive. They have to use resource intensive. I don't want to say too much, because this article is one of those that you kind of just have to read to understand why it's so popular. I mean, you can see the rating. The rating speaks for itself. One of the simplest, smartest articles on the wiki, and its initial idea has spun out into a whole series of tales, a whole series of other SCPs, a whole division of the Foundation. I don't want to say much more other than it's weird. It's not terribly scary, but man, it's strange. It is a bizarre article. We'll also be discussing next week a little bit of this, the Anti-Memetics Division, which is a whole other can of worms. An anti-meme is an idea with self-censoring properties, an idea which by its intrinsic nature discourages or prevents people from spreading it. That is the core of what 055 is. I don't want to say much more, but the Anti-Memetics Division is one of my favorite concepts on the wiki. And if you want a good introduction, 055 is a good place to start. I don't have much else to say. Thanks for watching, if indeed you are still watching. Thanks for watching the VOD, if you're watching after the fact. And, yeah, I don't have much else to say. I can't promise anything about my schedule next week, because I'm starting a job on Sunday, and then getting more into it on Tuesday. So it might be a bit longer of a wait until I have a full-fledged weekly schedule out for this week. So just hang tight. Ideally, we'll still be doing Silent Hill, Skyrim, and Book Club, but no promises. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like and subscribe. Check the links in the description. I've got a Discord server for Strange Waves, which is my whole everything. I got my blog for Strange Waves. I got my Etsy shop where you can buy clay figures. I don't have to. I made one of the Plague Doctor a while back, but it wasn't my favorite. I think it might be upstairs. Anyway, you can order a custom figure of any kind, or any of the figures I have, or pride beads, like these fellas. Like these bisexual fellas. So yeah, feel free to check out those links. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that fun stuff. And